First, beginning in the Shali Tilson case, they just failed to do anything at all to provide him any medical attention that he needed, and it was obvious. We have spoken with inmates who were with Shali, who knew and could tell that he was having a mental health crisis, and the sheriff and all of the people who are responsible for his life did nothing at all. Literally put him on a suicide watch instead of providing him any medication or assisting him in any way with any treatment. As it relates to Miss Henry, when she came in to the jail, she expressed the need for medical attention, that she was having a health crisis, and again, instead of providing that medical attention, they put her into a cell where she began to have further complications and ultimately died as a result of. And so this is, for us, when you put a person who was allegedly selling guns that are taken out of the jail to pawn shops, you can't trust him over the property, then you put him over people. That decision was a decision that was made at the highest levels in Rockdale County Sheriff's Department, and that decision cost the lives of these two individuals by putting someone in a position. If you couldn't trust them to take care of property, how could you possibly trust them to take care of human beings? And that Sergeant Lang is currently in the Rockdale County Jail with no bond for selling these guns, again, allegedly selling these guns to pawn shops and profiting off of it. That investigation was already going on when he was put in charge and placed in a position of authority in the jail. It just makes no logical sense at all, and it just goes to show the level of disregard for human life in the Rockdale County Sheriff's Department and the Rockdale County Jail as a whole.
I didn't read the full document, I have to admit. Are you asking for anything in reference to what should happen to the sheriff of Rockdale County? No,
we're asking for an investigation. We believe that a federal investigation is appropriate and is necessary, that they should come here from Washington, D.C., deploy all of their resources, as many as possible as necessary, to do a thorough investigation and to ensure that these families get the answers that they've been waiting for. It will be 1 year in March, 1 entire year, and no one has been indicted. The investigation hasn't been completed. There's no charges that have been brought. Almost 1 entire year. Justice delayed is justice denied. Justice delayed is justice denied. And so we need assistance. They can't do it on their own, and so it requires the federal government to intervene. It's not unlike times in the South when our ancestors had to call on federal intervention. We're having to do that now. We're having to take this extraordinary step. And this is something that we don't do often and we don't do lightly. But it has just come to this point where we can't wait any longer.
Mr. Davis, can you talk about in your press you spoke about it was some kind of contrary with the NAACP and trying to rig the election or something? Can you speak on that?
That's correct. It is, again, our understanding is reported. We've seen the documentation that the sheriff himself went to the NAACP meeting. He helped people register to become NAACP members of that particular branch, and then he stood and helped count the ballots for the election to try to get the president of the Rockdale County NAACP out of office because he had been such a public critic of the sheriffs dealing with these deaths. And so the state NAACP has to get involved and overturn that election in order to keep him in office. So these are the lengths at which the sheriff has gone to try to silence his critics in Rockdale County. And it's unfortunate that he would go to those lengths, but that is what we've seen. We've seen it with Ms. Dean and with the NAACP of Rockdale County. So it's clear there needs to be federal intervention because he is doing everything he can to get this to go away. And these families refuse to go away.
Would you say this is a culture or a trend?
We believe that it's a culture. If you look at the documents that we'll provide you, they've had 6 arrests of deputies for a variety of issues, not only selling guns, sexual battery, there are a variety, all of these drugs. So there are all of these different arrests that have happened of deputies. They're supposed to be upholding the law. So they've lost institutional control, and because of it, it's a culture issue, and there has to be federal intervention to address this, or this will just continue to spiral in the manner in which it has. You have one death of severe dehydration, and then you don't take any precautions. You suspend people, not terminate, you suspend people. They remain in the jail, and then 76 days later, this young man loses his mother. So again, it's a matter of culture of the Rockdale County Jail that requires federal investigation in order to at least shed some light and bring some answers to these families who've been waiting far too long.
Have you talked to the sheriff then?
Oh yes, we have. We met with the sheriff at the GBI when this first happened. And the first comment that the sheriff made publicly about this was that the citizens of Rockdale needed to humble themselves. Humble themselves. That kind of language in and of itself is deeply disturbing when you're talking about the death of someone. No, sheriff, he must humble himself to the will of the people. And so we're in this predicament of having to go outside of the state of Georgia and call for a federal investigation because of that level of arrogance and disregard for human life.
Why did the sheriff say that people need to humble themselves? What was behind that?
Humble yourself.
Ask him.
He says humble yourself so that, don't jump to conclusions. And when the GBI report came out, the autopsy, and it became clear that he died of dehydration, that's neglect. He was in the jail, Shali Tilson was in jail for 9 days. And in order for you to die of dehydration, he didn't take in any water for at least 48 to 72 hours. And he was supposed to be watched and checked on every 15 minutes. So again, something is clearly not adding up as it relates to who was responsible, what they failed to do, and how they've been held responsible, because as of now, they have not.
Can you talk about the use of force reports? Because I read an extensive report, and there was so many different incidents where the officer engaged Mr. Tilson.
That again, the use of force reports that's some of the new evidence that we've been able to obtain. There were 6 use of force reports. After every use of force, there's supposed to be medical attention and a nurse checking to see if the individual is not harmed beyond going back into their jail cell. So there was nurses, there were deputies who all knew that Mr. Tilson was having a mental health crisis, and they did nothing. And so what the use of force reports do further substantiate what we've always believed, is that they knew and they didn't act. They knew. It wasn't as if he was tucked away somewhere and there was no interaction, so they didn't know what was going on. They knew, and they decided not to act. We want to thank everyone for coming. We want to thank these organizations. We want to thank these families for having the courage to stand up. They've been very concerned for their own safety. When a loved one is lost at the hands or in law enforcement custody, you don't know who to trust.
That's right.
And so these organizers have come to let these families know that the community supports them and they are not alone in this fight for justice. And so we thank you all for coming. We thank these families and all of these organizers. Thank you very much.